Have you ever had that feeling, that unshakable sense that you're being watched? I have, and it all started in the most ordinary place you could imagine, a coffee shop. It was my morning ritual, same order, same time, every single day. And that's where I first noticed her. She was always there, tucked away in the same corner table, a silent fixture in my daily routine. At first, I didn't think much of it. It's a coffee shop, people have routines, right? I brushed it off as a simple coincidence, but then things started to get strange. One morning, I was running late. My alarm didn't go off. I spilled coffee on my shirt, just one of those days. As I rushed into the cafe, flustered and out of breath, she looked up from her book. A small, knowing smile played on her lips. Rough morning? She asked, her voice calm and even. I was taken aback. How could she possibly know? I mumbled something about my alarm, and she just gestured to the watch on her wrist. You're usually 5 minutes earlier, she said, as if it was the most normal observation in the world. That was the turning point. After that day, our brief, one-sided interactions became a regular thing. But she wasn't just commenting on my timing anymore. She seemed to know things I'd never told a soul. She'd make casual remarks about my life, things that were impossible for a stranger to know. Skipping lunch again? She'd comment lightly as I rushed out with just a coffee. Enjoy your day off tomorrow, she'd say, even when I hadn't mentioned it to anyone at work. It was like she had a window into my mind, my schedule, my life. I started to feel a knot of dread tighten in my stomach every time I approached that coffee shop. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she overheard me on the phone. Maybe she was just exceptionally observant. But the explanations were wearing thin. The unease was growing into genuine fear. I started changing my routine, hoping to shake her. I'd go to a different cafe, take a different route to work. I felt like I was constantly looking over my shoulder. The simple pleasure of my morning coffee was gone, replaced by a chilling anxiety. I thought that by avoiding her, I could make it all stop. But it was already too late. The final straw, the moment that shattered any remaining illusion of coincidence, was the most terrifying of all. I had been having a really tough time at work. I was stressed, unfulfilled, and had been secretly polishing my resume, dreaming of a fresh start. I hadn't told anyone. Not my family, not my friends, not a single person. One afternoon, as I was leaving the cafe, determined to make it my last visit, she caught my eye. Her gaze was intense. You're thinking of changing jobs, she said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. The blood drained from my face. How? How could she possibly know that? That was it. I was done. I never went back to that coffee shop again. I completely altered my routine. I was paranoid, checking every reflection, every shadow. For a week, there was nothing. A blissful, silent week. I started to breathe again. I told myself it was over, that I had imagined the whole thing, that I was just being paranoid. I convinced myself I was safe. Then, one evening, I was looking out my apartment window, watching the city lights flicker on. My gaze drifted down to the street below, and there she was, sitting on a bench directly across from my building. She looked up as if she knew I was watching, and that same chilling smile spread across her face. She raised her wrist, and I saw it, the same watch. I realized then, with a terrifying certainty, that she hadn't just been at the coffee shop. She had been everywhere, and she wasn't just watching my routine. She was watching me.
The first thing that bothered me wasn't what he said. It was the fact that he said it before I told him anything. This happened a few years ago when I was living alone in a city I'd only moved to recently. I was still finding my feet, you know? I didn't know many people yet, which is why I relied on taxis a lot to get around. That night, it was absolutely pouring rain, one of those classic city downpours that just soaks you in seconds. To make things worse, my phone battery was flashing that dreaded red symbol, about to die at any moment. So, instead of calling a ride through an app like I normally would, I did something I rarely did. I flagged down a cab on the street. An old-school yellow taxi pulled over, its headlights cutting through the rain. The driver looked completely normal. Middle-aged, clean-shaven, and he gave me a polite nod as I approached. Honestly, nothing about him stood out. He just seemed like any other cabbie you'd find on a rainy night. I pulled open the heavy back door, slid onto the worn vinyl seat, and shut the door behind me, the sound a dull thud against the roar of the rain. I was about to give him my destination, the words forming on my lips, but before I could say a single word, he pulled away from the curb. Then he said it. Same place as last time, right? I just froze for a second. My mind raced, trying to place his face. Had I ridden with him before? No, I was sure of it. I laughed it off a little awkwardly. I figured he must have mistaken me for someone else. It happens. I don't think so, I said, trying to sound casual. I've never had you before. He didn't look back at me in the rearview mirror. He just kept his eyes fixed on the rain-slicked road ahead. No, he said, his voice completely calm, almost matter-of-fact. I'm pretty sure I have. That was the first real flicker of unease. A little knot tightened in my stomach. But again, I tried to rationalize it. I told myself that in a big city, drivers see thousands of faces. It's easy to get people mixed up. I took a breath and finally gave him my address. He just nodded, as if I'd just confirmed something for him. Yeah, he said quietly. That's what I thought. The rest of the ride started in silence, a heavy, uncomfortable silence. The only sounds were the rhythmic thump of the windshield wipers and the hiss of the tires on the wet pavement. I kept glancing down at my phone, using the last dregs of its battery to watch the GPS dot. I was making sure he wasn't taking any strange detours or wrong turns. He wasn't. In fact, he was driving the exact fastest route home. That should have been reassuring. It should have made me feel better. But for some reason, it did the exact opposite. It made me more uncomfortable. How did he know the shortcuts so well? We were about halfway there when he spoke again, his voice cutting through the quiet. You usually get home around this time, he said. It wasn't a question, it was a statement. Later on weekends, though, my heart started pounding against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of fear. My hands felt cold. How? How do you know that? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. For the first time, he glanced at me in the rearview mirror, and the small, unreadable smile touched his lips. I drive nights, he said simply. You start to notice patterns. Patterns. My pattern. The thought sent a chill straight through me. I didn't say another word for the rest of the trip. I just stared out the window, watching the familiar streets of my neighborhood slide by, but they didn't feel familiar anymore. They felt alien, watched. When we finally pulled up in front of my apartment building, the relief I expected didn't come. I just sat there for a moment, frozen. I watched him take out a small spiral-bound notepad that was sitting on the console next to him. He clicked a pen and marked something down on the page. What's that? I asked, my curiosity getting the better of my fear. He flipped the page closed without showing me. Just mileage, he said, his voice still unervingly calm. I fumbled with my wallet, paid him as quickly as I could, probably giving him way too much of a tip. I just wanted out of that car. I scrambled out into the rain and practically ran towards the entrance of my building. As I was fumbling for my keys, I heard him call out through his still open window, "Lock your door tonight." I didn't turn around. I didn't dare look back. I just jammed the key in the lock, threw the door open, and slammed it shut behind me, leaning against it, my heart hammering. The next morning, an email from my landlord was waiting in my inbox. It was a building-wide security alert. It mentioned that several residents had reported a taxi driver for unsettling behavior for stalking passengers. The description matched him perfectly. I never took a street cab again after that night. It makes you wonder how many people are watching. How many people notice your patterns? Thanks for listening. Have you ever met someone online and just clicked? I mean, really clicked. You feel like you've known them your whole life. That's what happened to me. I was deep into this hobby, like obsessed. I spent all my free time on forums dedicated to it, and that's where I met them. We started chatting, and soon it became an everyday thing. Morning, noon, and night. It was like they were a part of my daily routine. They learned everything about me. My weird morning rituals, my favorite snacks, what made me laugh, what got me down. They knew my bad habits better than I did. I felt so seen, so understood. It was comforting having someone who just got me. We talked for months, and the connection just grew stronger. It felt real, you know? Like this was a friendship that was meant to be, but then things started to feel a little off. I began noticing something strange. They would reply to my messages instantly, and I mean instantly. At first I thought, wow, they must be as glued to their phone as I am. But it was happening at all hours. I knew they lived in a completely different time zone. There was no way their sleep schedule, or lack thereof, made any sense. It was like they were always awake, always online, just waiting for me. I tried to brush it off. Maybe they were just a night owl. Maybe their job had weird hours. I made a joke about it once, something like, "Do you ever sleep?" Their reply sent a weird shiver down my spine. They said, "I don't need to log in to see you." I laughed it off, but the words stuck with me. It was meant to be a joke, right? It was just their quirky sense of humor. But a tiny part of me started to feel a prickle of unease. That should have been a massive red flag, but I was so invested in the friendship, I just ignored it. The feeling of being constantly watched started to grow. The instant replies, the comment about not needing to log in. It all started to add up. The comfort I once felt turned into a subtle, creeping dread. I needed some air. I decided to pull back a bit, just to get some perspective. I stopped replying as frequently. I figured they'd get the hint. I just needed some space to breathe. But they didn't get the hint. Or they did, and they didn't care. When I went quiet, the messages didn't stop. They started coming from new accounts. Different usernames, different profile pictures, but it was unmistakably them. The same unique writing style, the same quirky phrases and inside jokes that only we shared. My stomach dropped. How many accounts did they have? It felt like they were closing in on me from all sides. The digital world, which had once been my escape, now felt like a trap. The real terror began when it crossed over from the screen into my physical world. One evening, there was a knock at my front door. I wasn't expecting anyone. I peered through the peephole, but the porch was empty. Cautiously, I opened the door. There was no one there. But taped to the wood was a piece of paper. It was a printed screenshot of one of our earliest, most personal conversations. The blood drained from my face. They knew where I lived. They had been here. I felt completely exposed, violated. This person, this entity I had only known through a screen, was now physically at my doorstep. The safety of my own home was gone. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of leaves outside my window sent a jolt of pure fear through me. I packed a bag the next day and stayed with a friend. I couldn't go back there. A few weeks later, I moved. I found a new apartment in a different part of the city, changed my number, and scrubbed my online presence as best as I could. The day I moved out of my old place, I checked one last time. The original account and all the new ones had vanished. Completely gone, no trace they ever existed. It was like they were wiped from the internet. To this day, I have no idea who they were. Or what they were. Was it one person? A group? I'll probably never know. The scariest part is not knowing how much of my life they could actually see, and how much they were already a part of before I even met them online. It's a chilling thought that sometimes keeps me up at night. So be careful who you talk to online. You never really know who's on the other side of the screen. Thanks for listening. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next one. I was waiting for the bus when I started talking to him. That was my first mistake. It was a cold Tuesday morning, the kind where the air bites at your cheeks and you just want to be anywhere else. The bus was late, of course. He was standing a few feet away, bundled up in a dark coat, and he just turned to me and said something about the delay. You know, the usual small talk. The weather, the city, how buses are never on time when you really need them to be. He seemed perfectly normal, friendly even. He had this easy smile and a way of talking that made you feel comfortable. I found myself opening up more than I usually would with a stranger. We chatted for a few minutes, just passing the time. I mentioned that I was running late for a meeting downtown and how frustrating it was. I started to say I just hate being late, it makes me feel so, and before I could finish, he cut in smoothly. Unprofessional and flustered. He said it with a nod, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. I laughed it off, a lucky guess, right? Lots of people hate being late. It didn't feel weird, not yet anyway. It was just a moment of connection with a stranger. We kept talking, and the conversation drifted to my job. I vented a little, saying I was thinking about quitting, that the daily grind was getting to me. I'm just so tired of it all. I sighed. I've been thinking about leaving for a while now. Because it's draining and you feel completely stuck, he said. This time he wasn't smiling. He just looked at me, his eyes steady. The words hung in the air between us. That's when the laughter died in my throat. It wasn't a guess anymore. That was the exact phrase, the exact feeling that had been churning in my mind for months, a secret I'd barely admitted to myself. The friendly atmosphere suddenly evaporated, replaced by a cold, prickling sensation on the back of my neck. My heart started beating a little faster. How could he know that? How could he know the specific word? Stuck? I took a small step back, trying to appear casual, but my mind was racing. Have we met before? I asked, my voice a little shaky. You seem really familiar. I was searching my memory, trying to place his face, a client. Someone from college? Nothing. He just shook his head slowly, his expression unreadable. No, he said, his voice calm, almost gentle. We've never met. But you think the same things every morning at this bus stop. He said it so matter-of-factly, like he was commenting on the color of the sky. The same things. Every morning. The sheer impossibility of it made me feel dizzy. It was like he had peeled back a layer of my skull and was just reading the thoughts as they formed. From that moment on, the world tilted on its axis. Every sentence I started, he finished. It was a horrifying, surreal duet. I'd start to complain about my landlord. I swear, if he doesn't fix that leak soon. And he'd finish. You're going to report him to the housing authority, even though you know it's a hassle. I tried to throw him off. I thought of something random, something deep from my past. I began, when I was a kid, I had this recurring dream about he looked at me, a flicker of something like pity in his eyes, and said, a forest where all the trees had faces and you could never find your way out. My blood ran cold. I had never told a single soul about that dream. Not my parents, not my best friend, not my therapist. It was my own private childhood nightmare, and this stranger, this man in a dark coat at a bus stop, knew it. I stopped talking. I couldn't speak. What was there to say? He already knew. My mind was a chaotic storm of fear and confusion. Who was he? What did he want? Was I going crazy? I felt transparent, violated. He just stood there, waiting as if this was a normal conversation. The roar of an engine broke the silence. The bus was finally arriving, its brakes hissing as it pulled up to the curb. The doors swung open. People started shuffling forward, eager to get out of the cold. I should have been relieved, but all I felt was a rising panic. I couldn't get on that bus. I couldn't be trapped in a metal box with him. He moved toward the door, then turned back to look at me one last time. His expression was blank, but his eyes were locked on mine. As the doors began to close, sealing him inside, he spoke. He said the exact thought that was screaming in my head at that very second, word for word. If I get on that bus with him, I will never get off. And then he was gone. The bus pulled away from the curb, leaving me standing alone on the sidewalk, trembling. I watched it disappear down the street, my own reflection staring back at me from the dark glass of the bus shelter. I never went back to that bus stop. I changed my entire routine. I started taking a different route, leaving at a different time, even walking an extra 20 minutes to a subway station just to avoid that corner. I quit my job a week later, the one he knew I felt stuck in. I moved to a different neighborhood. I tried to erase the encounter, to convince myself it was a hallucination, a stress-induced psychotic break. But I know it wasn't, because sometimes, even now, when I'm in a conversation and I pause, hesitating before I speak, I get this chilling feeling. It's a strange internal echo. It feels like someone, somewhere, already knows exactly what I'm about to say. It feels like he's still listening. It happened while I was grocery shopping. Broad daylight, busy store. There was nothing even remotely scary about the situation at first. I was just standing in the cereal aisle, doing the usual thing, comparing prices, trying to figure out which brand had the least amount of sugar but still tasted good. And that's when I heard it. A voice right behind me said my full name, first name, middle name, last name. Clear as a bell. My first thought was that it had to be a friend playing a joke. It's the kind of thing one of my college buddies would do. So I turned around, a big, stupid smile on my face, ready to laugh, but the smile just froze there. I didn't recognize the man at all. He was tall, thin, wearing a plain gray hoodie, maybe in his late 30s, and his face. There was just no expression, none. He was just standing there, holding a shopping basket with a single can of soup in it. "Sorry," I said, my smile feeling awkward now. "Do I know you?" He looked genuinely confused, like I was the one being strange. "You don't remember me?" he asked. His voice was flat, no emotion. I shook my head, feeling a little creeped out. He just studied my face for what felt like forever, his eyes scanning every feature. Then he nodded slowly, almost to himself. "Right," he said. "Makes sense. And that really should have been the end of it. People are weird sometimes, right? You have strange encounters in public." I just shrugged it off and went back to my shopping, trying to get the image of his blank face out of my head. I grabbed my cereal and moved on. But then, I noticed him again. I was in the frozen foods aisle, trying to decide between pizza and frozen dinners, and I saw him at the far end of the aisle. He wasn't shopping. He was just standing there, next to the ice cream freezers, watching me. The second our eyes met, he looked away, pretending to be interested in a tub of vanilla ice cream. My heart started beating a little faster. Okay, this is weird. This is really weird. I quickly grabbed a pizza and practically power walked to the other side of the store, heading for the dairy section. I tried to tell myself I was overreacting. It's a public place. It's a coincidence. He's just shopping like everyone else. But my hands were getting clammy. I grabbed a carton of milk, and as I turned my cart, I did a quick scan of the area. There he was again. This time he was near the checkout lanes, not in line, just standing by the magazine rack. Again, just watching. The gray hoodie was like a beacon of dread now. Every time I saw it, a cold chill went down my spine. I felt like I was in a bad movie. My mind was racing. Who is this guy? Why does he know my full name? Why is he following me? I decided I couldn't just leave. I couldn't just go to my car with this guy potentially following me home. I needed to confront him. I needed an answer. Taking a deep breath, I abandoned my cart right there in the middle of the aisle and walked straight towards him. My heart was pounding in my chest. He saw me coming, but he didn't move. He just watched me approach, that same blank expression on his face. "Okay, who are you?" I demanded, trying to sound braver than I felt. "And why are you following me?" He didn't seem surprised or angry. He just looked at me, and for the first time, a tiny hint of a smile touched his lips. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was unsettling. "You'll remember eventually," he said, his voice calm. "Remember what?" "I don't know you." My voice was getting louder, and a few people in the checkout line were starting to stare. "How do you know my name?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. He smiled that faint, creepy smile again. "You write it down more than you think." And then he just turned, put his single can of soup back on a candy display, and walked out of the store. He didn't look back. I just stood there, completely stunned, my mind reeling from his last words. "You write it down more than you think?" What did that even mean? I was so shaken that I left my full cart of groceries and just went home. The drive was terrifying. Every gray car behind me, every person I passed on the street, I thought it was him. When I finally got inside my apartment and locked the door, bolting it shut, I leaned against it, my body shaking. That night I went into a full-blown panic mode. I checked all my social media. I scoured my friends lists, my tagged photos, my old posts, looking for his face, looking for any connection. There was nothing. No mutual friends, no strange comments, no DMs from anyone I didn't recognize. My profiles were all private. It didn't make any sense. The next day, I tried to convince myself it was just a bizarre one-off event. A prank, maybe? But his words kept echoing in my head. You write it down more than you think. I started thinking about all the places my name might be. Online orders, subscriptions, mailing lists, forms at the doctor's office. It's everywhere. The thought was paralyzing. Then the small things started happening. A few days after the grocery store incident, I bought coffee and paid with my card. When the barista handed me the receipt to sign, my full name, first, middle, and last was already printed on the signature line. I never give my middle name for anything. I asked the barista about it, and she just shrugged, saying the machine must have pulled it from my card. But my card only has my first and last name. A week later, I came out of work to find a small yellow sticky note on my car's windshield. It was stuck right in the center of the driver's side. It had just 2 letters on it, written in neat, block handwriting. My initials? Just my initials, nothing else. There was no one around. The parking garage was empty and silent. I felt that same cold dread from the grocery store wash over me. He was still out there. I never saw the man in the gray hoodie again. I never saw his face. But the feeling of being watched never really went away. It's been years now. I've moved twice. I'm more careful with my personal information. But sometimes when I'm in a crowd on a busy street or in a quiet library, I'll hear it. A faint whisper, just on the edge of my hearing. Someone right behind me saying my name, my full name. And I've learned my lesson. I never ever turn around anymore. I just keep walking.
Every weekday morning, I take the bus at exactly 6:10 a.m. The stop is on Hawthorne Avenue, a narrow roadside strip with cracked concrete and a bent pole holding a faded blue sign. A single street lamp buzzes above, casting a dull yellow circle of light onto the wet road. The air always smells like rain and cold exhaust at that hour, and the street is usually empty. I wear the same thing every day, a dark gray hoodie, black work trousers, and scuffed white sneakers. My headphones stay around my neck, but I never play anything. I like to stay aware. I'm a creature of habit. I've always found comfort in routine. That's why I noticed him. The first time, I didn't think much of it. He stood about 10 feet away, just outside the brightest part of the street lamp's glow. He was tall, maybe 6'2", and thin, with a slightly hunched posture. He wore a long brown coat that hung past his knees, even though the weather wasn't that cold. Under it, dark trousers and black leather shoes that looked strangely polished for a bus stop that early. His hair was jet black, neatly parted and slicked flat. His face was pale and angular, with sharp cheekbones and thin lips. His eyes were dark, fixed on the road ahead. He stood perfectly still, hands folded behind his back. No phone, no bag, nothing. He didn't look at me or acknowledge me at all. The bus came, I got on, and I forgot about him. But the next morning, he was there again, same spot, same distance, same brown coat, polished shoes, and folded hands. The street lamp buzzed, the road glistened, and he stood just outside the light, waiting. By the 4th day, I knew something was wrong. I changed my routine. I went to a different bus stop 3 blocks south, one with a brighter lamp and more foot traffic. When I arrived, he was already there. Same tall frame, same brown coat, standing 10 feet away with his hands behind his back, as if he had been waiting for a long time. Another morning, I walked 15 minutes to a main road near a grocery store, where delivery trucks idled and security cameras were mounted on poles. He stood at the edge of the light, half-shadowed, coat unmoving, posture unchanged. Always 10 feet away, always still. On Friday, I left my apartment early at 5:40 a.m., thinking there was no way he could anticipate that. When I reached the stop, the street lamp was buzzing, the pavement was damp, and he was standing there exactly as before. That was the first time I felt real fear. One morning, I pretended to scroll on my phone and angled the screen toward him, watching his reflection. Without turning his head, without changing his posture, he spoke. His voice was calm and even. You won't catch me doing anything wrong. My stomach dropped. I hadn't said a word. He slowly turned to face me, stepping just enough into the light for me to see his face clearly. His features looked rehearsed, like every expression had been practiced. His dark eyes locked onto mine without blinking. You take the 6:22 on Mondays, he said. The 6:18 on Wednesdays. Fridays you hesitate before stepping forward. I took a step back, my heart pounding in my ears. He smiled for the first time. It was small and tight. It didn't reach his eyes. When the bus arrived, I got on without looking back. Through the fogged window, I watched him stand there under the buzzing street lamp. He didn't get on. He just raised one hand and waved as the bus pulled away. After that, I stopped taking the bus entirely. Weeks passed. I walked, carpooled, anything to avoid that routine. I almost convinced myself it was over. Then one night, my car broke down on Hawthorne Avenue. Same cracked sidewalk, same bent pole, same yellow street lamp buzzing overhead. And beneath it, standing just outside the light, was the man. Same brown coat, polished shoes, and folded hands. He looked relieved when he saw me. I was worried you'd stopped coming, he said. I asked him why he was always there, why he kept waiting. He tilted his head slightly, as if the answer should have been obvious. This is where I'm supposed to wait. I asked him who he was waiting for. He took one slow step forward, closing the distance he had always kept. 10 feet became 5. You, he said. I ran. The next morning I moved. New apartment, new job, new city, new routines. But sometimes when I'm standing somewhere unfamiliar, under a street lamp that buzzes too softly, I get the feeling that I'm late, that someone has already been there for a while. Standing 10 feet away, hands folded behind their back, waiting.
I slowed down without realizing it. I don't remember deciding to. My foot just eased off the gas. Ahead, a sign read "Welcome to Marrow Creek." Behind it, there were buildings, real ones. A diner, a gas station, a row of houses that looked lived in. And yet, my hands were shaking. Because this stretch of road had always been empty. For years, no construction, no detours, no announcements. A whole town doesn't just appear overnight. I told myself the obvious lie. I must have taken a wrong turn. But the road was the same, the trees were the same. Even the pothole near mile marker 17 was still there. The town was the only new thing. I checked my phone. No signal. That wasn't unusual out here, but what was unusual was the silence. No wind, no birds, no distant traffic. Just the low hum of my engine, and the feeling that the town was watching me. I should have kept driving. That's the part one replay the most. I could have driven straight through. But then I saw someone standing outside the diner. A man in a dark jacket, hands in his pockets, smiling like he'd been waiting. I pulled over. The diner bell rang when I stepped inside. The smell hit me, first coffee, grease, something sweet underneath that I couldn't place. There were people sitting at the counter. All of them turned to look at me, not startled, not curious, relieved. "Morning," the waitress said. She already had a cup of coffee in her hand, black, no sugar, exactly how I drink it. "You're right on time," she added. I hadn't told her my name. I hadn't told her anything. The walls were covered in photographs, families, parades, graduations, normal things. But as I looked closer, my stomach tightened. One photo showed a man cutting a ribbon at what looked like the opening of the town. The man was younger. But it was me, same crook nose, same scar above my eyebrow. I dropped the coffee cup. It shattered on the floor. No one reacted. "First day's always the hardest," the man from outside said, sliding into the booth across from me. Up close, his eyes were wrong. Too familiar. "You don't remember yet," he said gently. "But you will. Remember what?" I asked him where I was. He just smiled again. "Home," I ran, out the door, back to my car. The town felt different now, closer, tighter. The buildings leaned in, just slightly, like they didn't want me to leave. I started the engine and hit the gas. The road stretched ahead of me, too far, too straight. The trees on either side blurred together, repeating like a broken image. No matter how long I drove, the town didn't disappear. The welcome sign passed by again, and again, and again, my phone buzzed. One bar of signal. A notification. Missed call, Mom, I answered immediately. She didn't sound panicked. She sounded confused. Who is this? She asked. I laughed, relief flooding in. Mom, it's me. There was a silence. Then softly, I don't have a son. The call ended. When I stopped screaming, I realized something worse. I couldn't remember my apartment, or my job, or the city I was driving toward. Every memory past this road felt thin, incomplete, like a dream dissolving after you wake up. The town, on the other hand, it felt solid. Night fell too fast. The streetlights flickered on all at once. Every house had a light glowing inside. Doors opened, people stepped out, all of them looking at me, waiting. The man from the diner stood at the center of the street. You can stop fighting it, he said. The world outside forgets fast. It always does. I asked him what this place was. He looked almost sad. A replacement, he said. They don't take you by force. They let you fade. Every town needs people. Every story needs characters. When someone is forgotten, truly forgotten. Marrow Creek makes room. The photos on the walls update. The memories rewrite. And the road? The road makes sure no one comes looking. I don't know how long I've been here now. Time works differently. I help run the diner sometimes. People wave when they pass. They know my name. I almost do too. Yesterday, a car slowed down near the sign. A woman behind the wheel, confused, curious, just like I was. I stepped outside and smiled. And for a moment, I thought I recognized her. If you're driving alone and see a town that shouldn't exist, don't stop, because if you do, someone out there is about to forget you ever did.
It started with a scratching. Not random, not frantic. Slow, deliberate, like someone dragging their nails across wood, just behind the walls. 3 weeks ago, I moved into an old Victorian house on Elm Street. Dark red brick, white trim peeling like dead skin, tall windows that reflected more shadow than light. The realtor called it a steal. Quiet street, no close neighbors, original woodwork. She never mentioned the warmth in the walls. The first night, the scratching came from behind the bedroom wall, too rhythmic to be rats, too controlled, almost patient. I ignored it. Old houses settle, they breathe, that's what people say. By the 5th night, the scratching stopped, and the whispering began. Soft at first, like air slipping through cracks, then clearer. Sarah. My name, over and over, always from the same spot in the wall. I pressed my ear against the plaster. It was warm, not from pipes, from something alive beneath the paint. That night, sleep abandoned me. The whispers started telling stories, my stories, things no one else knew. The candy I stole when I was 7, the fight with my sister, the scar I pretended wasn't my fault. The voice sounded like mine, but older, ragged, like it had been screaming for decades. In the morning, I called a contractor. He cut into the wall. No pipes, no wiring, just insulation. And scratch marks, deep, long, parallel, like fingers clawing outward. He laughed, patched the hole, left. That night, the whispers were furious. You let him see me. I didn't sleep. At 3:07 a.m., the wall bulged. Not cracked, not shifted, bulged, as if something pressed its face against the plaster from the inside. I grabbed a hammer and swung. Dust exploded. Inside the wall was a mirror, old, cracked, buried there deliberately. It reflected my face, but my reflection blinked when I didn't. The whispers laughed. Now you see me. Hands pushed through the glass, not breaking it, but flowing through it like liquid. More bulges formed along the walls, more hands, more pressure. The house wasn't old. It was alive, and it knew me. I ran. The hallway stretched longer with every step. The floor softened beneath my feet, pulling me down like wet skin. Faces formed in the wallpaper. My face, twisted, trapped. "You can't leave!" My voice screamed from every wall. "You're part of me now." They say the house on Elm Street is empty again, but if you listen closely at night, you'll hear scratching and a voice calling your name. Come closer.
I had always thought lighthouses were safe, stoic, guiding lights for the lost. That summer, I took the keeper's job on Crow's Point, a tiny, storm-battered island miles from the mainland. The old lighthouse had been abandoned for years. No tourists, no boats, just the relentless crash of the sea and the wind that never seemed to sleep. The first night, I climbed the spiraling iron staircase to the top, lantern in hand, trying to shake the unease settling deep in my bones. The lamp hadn't worked in decades, but after a bit of coaxing, I got it lit. The beacon swung lazily across the waves, a weak halo against the thick, swirling fog. But then I noticed something strange. Shadows. They weren't from the lamp, but from behind me, stretching long and thin across the floor. I spun around. Nothing. Just empty walls and the echo of my own boots on the iron stairs. I laughed nervously. "It's just the wind," I told myself, my voice barely a whisper against the gale. But later, I began to hear voices. They were low, unintelligible murmurs carried on the wind from the edge of the cliffs. Whispers that seemed to rise from the dark water itself. They weren't calling to me, not at first, but I could feel them watching, observing, and slowly, a horrifying realization dawned on me. I couldn't leave. Every attempt to descend the lighthouse was met with a dense, impenetrable fog that never lifted, no matter how fast I moved. It was like the island itself was holding me captive. On the third night, the whispers grew louder, clearer. "Stay, stay." They moaned in a chilling unison that vibrated through the stone walls. I could barely breathe, a heavy weight pressing on my chest, yet I felt an undeniable compulsion to climb to the top, back to the lantern room. When I reached it, I saw them, figures in the mist, tall and faceless, their eyes glinting like wet stones in the weak light. They moved in perfect silence, circling the lighthouse, getting closer and closer. One reached for the glass. I watched, paralyzed, as it pressed its face against the window. Its mouth opened impossibly wide, stretching into a silent scream that I could feel in my mind, a psychic shriek that tore at my sanity. The beacon's light flickered once, twice, and then went out, plunging me into absolute darkness. In that suffocating blackness, I felt a cold hand grip my shoulder. I spun around, nothing. But when I turned back to the window, the figures were closer, their shapes almost inside the room. Panicked, I grabbed the emergency flare from my pack and slammed it against the glass with all my might. The red flare exploded in a brilliant, blinding light, and for a precious moment, the figures dissolved back into mist. I didn't wait. I ran. Down the stairs, my feet pounding a frantic rhythm on the iron, but each step felt longer, heavier, as if the lighthouse itself was resisting me, trying to pull me back. Behind me, I heard the slow, dragging sound of footsteps that weren't mine, echoing in the spiraling darkness, following me, relentless and unhurried. When I finally reached the bottom, the heavy wooden door wouldn't open. It was jammed shut. I was trapped. Then, a single voice, clearer than all the others, whispered right beside my ear, "Why did you come back?" I turned, my heart a hammer in my throat. A figure stood at the edge of the landing. A girl, maybe 10 years old, pale as the fog, her eyes hollow and endless. She tilted her head, and a slow, unnerving smile stretched across her face, a smile that didn't reach her vacant eyes. "You belong here now," she said. In that instant, the door flew open. I bolted into the fog, not daring to look back. I don't know how long I ran, my lungs burning, the jagged rocks tearing at my clothes. But when I finally risked a glance over my shoulder, the lighthouse was gone. Just a jagged rock and the crashing waves. I never returned to Crow's Point. I never told anyone what really happened. But sometimes, on stormy nights, when the wind howls just right, I swear I can see a faint light swinging in the far distance, and I can hear whispers on the wind, calling me back.
It started as a routine dive off the coast of Nova Scotia. The submersible team was mapping an uncharted trench when our instruments picked up something anomalous, a signal. It was low, rhythmic, almost like a melody. It didn't sound mechanical, and it certainly wasn't natural. It felt alive. Captain Harlow, ever the explorer, ordered us to investigate. We pushed deeper. The trench walls just fell away into complete darkness, stretching far deeper than any of our maps suggested. As we descended, that strange signal grew stronger. It began to vibrate through the very hull of our sub, a deep hum that felt like it was resonating inside my own bones. My crewmates tried to make jokes, to keep the nerves at bay, but their laughter sounded thin and hollow in the confined space. We were all on edge. At 2,300 meters, the sonar revealed a structure. It was impossible. Something metallic, yet organic, and just enormous. Imagine a cathedral built from black coral and steel, stretching endlessly into the dark void of the trench. And the signal? It was coming from inside. We decided to dock our submersible at an opening that looked almost like an airlock. Our lights barely penetrated the inky blackness, revealing nothing but jagged, shifting shadows. And then the humming stopped. The silence was absolute, deafening. A sudden, violent jolt shook the sub. Our systems flickered, emergency lights kicking on and off. And that's when I saw it through the main viewport. Movement. Long, sinuous shapes, hundreds of them, coiling around the structure like ancient guardians, just observing us. Their eyes, countless and endless, reflected our lights back at us. Then the signal resumed, but it was different this time. Louder, and now intelligible. A voice. It wasn't speaking any language we knew, but somehow we all understood it. "Why do you disturb us?" The entire crew froze. I realized the voice wasn't coming from our speakers. It was inside my head. Each one of us heard it, separately, personally. It felt like it was prying into our minds, pulling out memories, fears, regrets, laying our very souls bare. We panicked. We had to get out of there. We tried to retreat, but the trench had changed. The rock walls twisted and elongated, as if the very seabed was alive. The exit I had charted just moments before was gone. One by one, my crewmates began to scream, not out loud, but I could feel it, this psychic wave of terror. They were confronting visions too real, too personal to survive. I gritted my teeth, holding on to whatever shred of consciousness I had left. The signal pulsed faster like a monstrous heartbeat. Our little submersible trembled, and the instruments went completely haywire, screens flashing red, and then I understood. It wasn't just a signal, it was a lure, a test. It was testing us to see if we were capable of comprehending its existence, or if we would simply be consumed by it. With the last ounce of my willpower, I slammed the emergency ascent button. The sub shot upward, tearing through the warping trench. That signal followed us, a banshee wail echoing in the water, and worse, echoing in my skull. We finally broke through the waves at the surface, gasping for air, our hearts pounding against our ribs. We immediately radioed back to HQ, our voices shaking. They ran their own scans. The report came back clean. The trench was empty. There was nothing on their sonar, but I know what we saw. I know what we heard. They might say it was mass hysteria, some kind of deep-sea psychosis, but the signal, it's still here, a faint whisper in the back of my mind, waiting for the next curious explorers to dive too deep. Somewhere below, something ancient watches, and it remembers. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like and subscribe for more tales from the deep.